The Lost World of Agharti, Episode 3.
Admiral Byrd and the Forbidden Polar Expeditions.
What did Admiral Byrd see beyond the poles? What if the edges of our maps weren't endings at all, but thresholds? What if an aviator, celebrated by nations and trusted by science, flew beyond the white horizon and glimpsed something that shouldn't exist? Warm winds where the air should freeze, blue lakes where cartographers drew only ice, and a silence so guarded that official stories learned to speak around it. Hold that thought, breathe, let the ice crack just a little.
The man before the myth.
Richard Evelyn Byrd was not a fringe figure. He was a decorated American naval officer, a pioneer of aviation, and one of the most public faces of polar exploration in the 20th century. He fused meticulous planning with audacious courage. He learned to translate the language of wind and cloud into decisions that saved lives. He dealt in coordinates, not fantasies. Because of that, the rumors that grew around him have always cut deeper. When a dreamer speaks of hidden worlds, we shrug. When a mapmaker implies there may be more map, the world leans in. Byrd's polar career unfolded in distinct movements. 1926, the North. An attempt to fly over the North Pole, a feat that framed him as a new kind of hero. 1928-30, the South. The first major Antarctic expedition bearing his name. Bases, aircraft, radio, science fused with spectacle. 1934, the winter alone. Months of isolation at Advanced Base in Antarctica, a spiritual and physiological trial few can imagine. 1946-47, Operation Highjump, a vast post-war naval expedition to Antarctica, officially training and research, unofficially the seedbed of rumors that never stopped growing. 1955-56, Operation Deep Freeze, logistics and science for the International Geophysical Year, a careful choreography of ships and planes building the modern Antarctic presence. These are facts of itinerary and scale, but our question is different. What did he really see?
The strange reports, warmth inside the cold.
From the very beginning of polar exploration, oddities crept into expedition logs, winds that felt strangely mild, open water where ice charts promised closure, mirage-like illusions of far-off land. Some of these anomalies have straightforward explanations: katabatic winds, polynyas, persistent holes in sea ice, and the rare oases of Antarctica, where exposed rock and even liquid lakes exist because of local geology and microclimate. But then there are the accounts that ask for a longer breath. Writers gathered rumors that pilots on survey flights saw ice-free valleys, lakes reflecting the sun like coins, and slopes not smothered in white. Among the most provocative summaries comes through Alec McClellan's lens. Reports attributed to Byrd and his men spoke of landscapes not mapped on any globe, of fertile valleys where they should not exist, phrases that invite the imagination to step forward and the official record to take a prudent step back. Is it possible? Yes. Ice-free regions do exist in Antarctica, including rocky enclaves and lake-studded areas ringed by ice. But the way such reports were retold, amplified, and sometimes mystified is what linked them to a far older current of legend.
The diary that wouldn't die.
At the heart of the controversy is a text that refuses to go away, the so-called secret diary. In it, Byrd allegedly describes flying past the polar frontier into a verdant inner land, encountering advanced beings and hearing warnings about humanity's destructive path. For many, the diary is forged, its tone unlike Byrd's logs, its claims out of step with the physics he respected. For others, the diary is suppressed truth smuggled into the world by a conscience that could not bear silence. What matters for our journey is this: the diary, disputed as it is, mirrors a myth map older than modern flight. It sketches a passage through the poles into another world, not a land beyond the ice, but a realm within the earth. This is where Byrd's shadow intersects with Agharti, Shambhala, and the other names cultures have given to hidden sanctuaries preserved from catastrophe. McClellan doesn't ask you to swallow the diary whole. He asks you to notice how perfectly it rhymes with traditions that long predate Byrd, traditions telling of openings at the ends of the earth, of valleys of refuge waiting to be revealed, and of guardians intervening in human affairs when cycles require correction.
Operation Highjump, the curtain that fuels 1,000 theories.
Operation Highjump was immense. Ships, aircraft, thousands of personnel, and the logistical ambition of a nation learning how to live at the edge of the world. Officially, it was training, science, and mapping. Unofficially, it became a magnet for whispers. The expedition ended months earlier than scheduled. Equipment was lost. Accidents occurred. None of that is unusual in Antarctica. But early termination creates space for story. Rumors surfaced of mysterious craft, maneuvers that defied expectation, and encounters nobody wanted to put on paper. Statements attributed to Byrd in a South American interview, warning of threats that could strike from the polar regions with astonishing speed, were later softened or vanished by the official record. Argue what you will about reliability and motive, but notice the pattern. Where silence and anomaly meet, myth lays down roots. In that soil, Agharti grows again.
The Agharti connection, old rivers under new ice.
Why does Byrd's legend snap so cleanly onto the Agharti mythos? Because both share the same grammar. An entrance at the world's edge. A transition from a death element, ice, desert, void, to a life element, water, warmth, light. A guidance motif, signs, lights, the intuition of being led. A revelation, knowledge older than nations, guardians older than kings. A return, often reluctant, with a warning and a wound. This isn't just storycraft, it is initiation logic. In sacred narratives, the hero descends, meets a power, and returns with a gift or a warning. Byrd's tale, especially in its diary form, follows that underworld arc line by line. McClellan's contribution is to insist on continuity. Travelers from different centuries and continents speak of hidden lands, tunnels, warm realms in the cold, kings who never die. When modern explorers report odd warmth or lakes where none should be, he hears a classic cadence returning in a new register. The phrases he foregrounds, landscapes not mapped on any globe, fertile valleys where they should not exist, are the precise pressure points where empirical anomaly meets mythic memory.
Warm valleys, strange animals, and the temptation of certainty.
Stories attached to Byrd sometimes speak of unusual animal life, creatures that don't belong in the polar bestiary, flora that ought not survive. Here, discernment is essential. Polar regions do host life in surprising niches, including lichens, algae, microbial mats, seabird rookeries, and, in special geological settings, exposed ground with meltwater lakes. This is part of the polar planet the public seldom sees. But the leap from unexpected life to Pleistocene menagerie is vast. The ethical move is not to flatten the mystery into dismissal, nor to inflate it into certitude. The wiser move is to stand in the tension and ask what the persistence of such claims is telling us about our hunger, for wonder, for order, for a world still more than we have managed to measure.
Cold War shadows, myth-making, secrecy, and the politics of silence.
The timing matters. Highjump unfolded as the world pivoted into the Cold War, a season of classified projects, propaganda, and a habit of burying anomaly beneath the concrete of official narrative. In such a climate, even mundane details acquire charge, ambiguities become conspiracies, and an explorer's offhand remark can echo like a revelation. Did governments encourage ambiguity to obscure capabilities and intentions? Without question. Did that policy inadvertently fertilize myth? Absolutely. In that sense, the Byrd legend is a Cold War artifact as much as a polar one. A story formed where secrecy, technology, and ancient longing intersect.
Between Glacier and Mandala, two ways of reading Byrd.
There are two honest doors into this story, and both can be walked without contradiction.
1. The literal door.
Antarctica harbors ice-free oases, subglacial lakes, and geophysical quirks that can surprise even experts. Reports of warmth and open water can be real in specific contexts. The diary is likely inauthentic, and yet some primary anomalies remain interesting. The legend survives because the world is stranger than the average brochure, and because official narratives sometimes undercommunicate complexity.
2. The symbolic door.
The poles are thresholds of psyche as much as geography. Openings in the ice are dream images of initiation, a movement from cold certainty into living mystery. Agharti is the unconscious seen as civilization. Shambhala is virtue seen as kingdom. Byrd's mythic arc mirrors the descent encounter return structure of spiritual transformation. Reading Byrd literally without symbol reduces wonder to argument. Reading him symbolically without fact untethers us from the earth we are called to honor. Hold both. Let each correct the other.
What makes a myth durable?
A myth endures when it answers needs that do not expire. Cosmological need, the sense that reality possesses hidden architecture. Moral need, the intuition that a higher order guides history, especially when surface events seem senseless. Initiatory need, the craving for a path that takes us under and returns us changed. Ecological need, the yearning for a world that is still alive, capable of surprising us into respect. Byrd's name gathers these needs like iron filings around a magnet. He was competent, honorable, and in love with the unknown. That combination is the perfect host for a persistent legend.
Reflection.
When you hear openings at the poles, what exactly opens in you? Skepticism, curiosity, defense, wonder, name it. Which is harder for you, to admit the world might be deeper than you think, or to admit your stories might be using the world to tell you about yourself? If there were a sanctuary beneath the ice that preserved humanity's best knowledge, what would you hope it safeguarded from our age?
what science allows and mystery requires.
Geophysics does not support a planet that is hollow in the cinematic sense. The Earth has a solid inner core, a liquid outer core, a viscous mantle, and a thin crust. The temperatures and pressures at depth are not hospitable to surface life. That is one layer of truth. Another layer is this. Antarctica contains subglacial oceans, rivers, and lakes beneath kilometers of ice. It boasts ice-free deserts of rock. It keeps secrets very well. Humans have set foot on only a fraction of its surface. Our instruments extend our reach, but reverence stays wise. We know enough to be astonished by how much we don't know. The myth's work, then, is not to rewrite geology, but to re-enchant our posture, so that our science is conducted with awe, and our awe is disciplined by method.
Byrd's legacy reframed.
Take away the diary, remove the whispers. What remains is still extraordinary. A human being who treated the edges of possibility as invitations. Alone on the ice, he learned the weight of silence. In high flight, he saw the world as a whole. That changes a person. It can change a species if we let it. If we keep the diary but hold it lightly, it teaches in another register. It becomes a parable about thresholds, the moment when the known gives way to the possible, and the explorer must decide whether to become a guardian or a publicist of what was glimpsed. The greater the secret, the more careful the telling.
The Agharti question asked honestly.
Was Byrd's testimony evidence of Agharti or Cold War myth-making? The fairest answer is both, in part. As evidence, reports of warm valleys and open water align with a thin empirical fringe of known Antarctic phenomena. Told with wonder, they sit neatly beside global traditions of hidden refugees and underground centers of wisdom. As myth-making, secrecy, political theater, and the hunger for an organizing story amplified modest anomalies into metaphysical thunder. The world after World War II desperately wanted to believe that someone wise was at the helm. McClellan's value is to keep those two sentences in the same paragraph. He shows how 19th and 20th century seekers braided older Eastern currents into a narrative the West could walk, then points to the precise lines where Byrd's story stitches into that braid.
Inner practice, crossing the white horizon.
Sit upright. Let the breath settle into the belly. On the in-breath, silently say, I approach the edge. On the out-breath, I welcome what I cannot control. 5 breaths like this. Now ask, very simply without decoration, where am I refusing to see because seeing would require change? Let the question hang like aurora above a dark sea.
Final thoughts.
Maybe there is no warm garden beyond the poles. Maybe the only fertile valley is the one you cultivate within, warmed by the daily fire of your attention. Or maybe the world is kinder than our textbooks dare to print, and somewhere under ice, older than cities, there is a memory kept safe, waiting for us to grow into it. Either way, the invitation is the same. Let your maps be provisional and your wonder disciplined. Don't collapse mystery into credulity, and don't reduce anomaly into boredom. Walk the line. That's where explorers travel. That's where truth, literal or symbolic, has always waited. If this journey stirred something in you, help us keep the signal alive. Like this episode so more seekers find it. Subscribe to Positive Vortex and watch the series in order. Each chapter builds the next. Comment with your stance. Agharti as legend, symbol, possibility, or some braid of all three. Share this with one friend who still feels the call of the horizon. If you'd like to support this kind of long-form, ad-free storytelling, tap thanks or join. Your support genuinely keeps these deep dives possible. Next, we descend from the skies into the masters below, the luminous custodians said to guard humanity's lost wisdom. Whether real, symbolic, or both, their lessons might be exactly what this age requires.